Well, hello there, and welcome back to all you Mr. Jensen students. Today, in this video, we're going to be talking about NBT.4, and it says, understand the place value system, use place value understanding to round decimals to any place. And we've had experience in rounding before, and even we talked about rounding in class, but I want to reiterate this. Rounding is asking which is closer. Now, when we have rounding questions, it's always to a certain place in the base 10 numeral system. In this example we have here, it's round to the nearest tenth. So when you hear round, the word round it really means, if you were to graph this, it means which is closer. Are we closer? Which tenth are we closer to? Okay, so let's go ahead and graph this example, and then we'll identify what tenth we are closer to. Round 57 hundredths to the nearest tenth. Okay, so if I look at my tenths position, it looks like I have a 5, and I'm going to create a number line here, and in my number line I'm going to have 4 tenths, 5 tenths, 6 tenths, and 7 tenths. And then I'm going to go ahead and graph where exactly 57 hundredths is that. Well, it's going to be between 5 and 6 tenths. So I'm going to divide this tenth into hundredths. Here I go. This is pretty good here. Okay, so I have this tenth divided into 10 pieces, so each of these are a hundredth, and 57 would be, well, 51 hundredths, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57. So this is 57 hundredths right here, 57 hundredths. And we can ask ourselves, well, what are we closer to? Which tenth are we closer to? Are we closer to this tenth? Are we closer to this tenth? Are we closer to 6 tenths? Or are we closer to 7 tenths? That's supposed to be a 7. Are we closer to 7 tenths? Well, we can look pretty easily with this diagram and see that we're actually closest to 6 tenths. So we're going to round 57 hundredths. We're going to round this up. 57 hundredths is rounded up to 6 tenths. Okay, let's try this again. Down here, I have an example that says, please round 52 hundredths to the nearest tenth. Okay, well, here's my 5 tenths, 6 tenths, 7 tenths. And I'm going to graph 52 hundredths. 52 hundredths. And there's my middle. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to graph and say, well, this is 50 hundredths, 51 hundredths, 52 hundredths is right here. And we can easily see after we graph, which tenth are we closer to? Well, we're closer to 5 tenths. So I would say that 52 hundredths is rounded to 5 tenths. Okay, and when you look at the graph like this, when you start to do this a couple of times, you kind of see that there's a little bit of a rule begins to develop. A rule begins to develop, and the rule kind of looks like this: is that if we're rounding to the nearest tenth, whenever the hundredth is 5 hundredths and above, then we're going to round up. But whenever it's 4 hundredths and below, we're going to round down to the nearest tenth. And that's the rule that we kind of follow, and teachers try and teach us over and over, and maybe they kind of skip this whole graphing thing, but that's the rule that we kind of follow, is that whenever the hundredths position, when we're rounding to the tenths, whenever the hundredths position is a 5 hundredths or more, then we round up, and whenever it's 4 hundredths or less, then we round down to the nearest tenth. So let's go ahead and use that rule to look at this next set of examples. So it says, the rule is when the place to the left is a 0 through 4, we round down. When the place to the left is a 5 through 9, then we round up. So let's look at this one. We have 24 hundredths to the nearest tenth. Okay, well, the way we're going to do this, we're going to underline whatever in the hundredth or the tenths place, because we're rounding to the tenths. Let's underline the 2. It's in the tenths place. Then we look to the place to the left, right here, and we identify that it's a 4. Well, if we were to graph this, we would know that it's actually closer to the tenths that's lower. So we would round this down. We would say that 24 hundredths is rounded to 2 tenths. Okay, so that's a situation where we're a 0 through 4, so we're going to round down. We're a 0 through 4, so in the next spot over, so we're rounding down. Let's look at the next example. It says round 27 hundredths to the nearest tenths. Okay, well, what's in the tenths place? That's a 2. So the question is this closer to 2 tenths or is it closer to 3 tenths? Let's look at the place to the left, the hundredths place. What's in that spot? Well, it's a 7. Well, in the sevens, if I have a 7 in that spot, that's in the 5 through 9 category, 5, 6, 7. So that means I need to round up to the next tenth. Well, the next tenth from 2 is 3. So we would say that 27 hundredths is rounded to 3 tenths. And that's kind of the rule. And at the end of this video right now, I'm going to have a couple examples, some graphing questions, and also some other questions for you to round to show your new knowledge when it comes to rounding to any place value. And then in class, we'll do some more independent practice, and you can ask any clarifying questions you need of me. All right. Well, I look forward to see you guys in class soon, and we will talk more about NBT.4.